Hey, what's up guys, welcome to the Swanky Productions channel. My name is Ben. Today I'm going to be doing some questionable wiring on the TW200 back here. And if you guys missed it, I did install this Auxbeam headlight in here about a year ago with a 3D printed bracket I bought off of eBay. And the low beam in here works well enough. The high beam, however, is kind of lackluster. It doesn't really add a whole lot of fill out on the road. So I think having some auxiliary lights is really going to help out. Especially when I ride around at night, it's nice to be able to see in the ditches, and it's always good to be seen. So hopefully these cheapo LEDs that I bought off Amazon will help me out a bit. I pretty much just picked them out because they match the headlight. They're a real pain in the butt to try to get the nuts down in there and to get the fastener in place and everything, and I can't wait to try to put Loctite in them once I have them aimed correctly. But I'm going to be using the JNS Engineering brackets here, which are specially made for the TW. And big thanks to JNS Engineering for sending me this set to test out today. I am definitely a little bit nervous that the fasteners that they sent me are not going to be long enough to go all the way through the bracket. My high fender kit, my bracket for my reflector, and the clamp on the bottom. I guess we'll find out. I think they're actually the same length as the ones that I've got in there, to be honest. And of course you don't want anything in there too short, because then when you go to torque it down, you're going to pull your threads out. And the reason I said that what I'm going to be doing here is a little bit questionable is because my plan is to take these wires and just tap them directly into the high beam circuit. And there's a couple reasons that I prefer that, but the number one is that all I have to do to turn that light on is to flip this switch to high beam, and all I have to do to turn it back off when there's oncoming traffic is turn it back down to low beam. Just makes everything so much easier rather than having to try to fumble around and find a switch. You also don't have to add a switch, you don't have to wire in a switch, it just makes everything a lot smoother. And I have gotten away with this on a couple different machines, but I do have to admit it's not really the right way to do things. You should have a whole separate circuit with a relay, with its own fuse. But hopefully with the rather low amp draw that the headlight pulls and the hopefully low amp draw that the LED lights require, I won't be overloading that circuit. The right way to figure that out would be to calculate the amp draw, both of them, and see if it surpasses the fuse that's on that circuit. But I'm just going to wire everything up and kind of see what happens.
Warning, don't ever put a larger fuse size in to fix one that's blown. Fuse size is determined by wire gauge and should never be upsized.
So while I was installing this side, something sort of dawned on me, and that was the fact that I could switch out this little spacer bracket that goes behind the high fender kit just to kind of space it off of the triple tree a bit, and instead stick my new light bracket and the bracket for the reflector in between there. So basically I end up with the same amount of spacing distance, but I don't have to go through all of that. So I've got a lot more threads sticking through, which definitely makes me feel a lot better. I don't think I would have had enough threads to feel good in there otherwise. It looks like these brackets are made for a slightly smaller fastener. The bolt that my lights came with is quite large and will not fit through here. So to remedy that, I've got my little unit bit here that I will go up a few sizes and hopefully drop this right in. Alright guys, be honest, do they look silly or do they look cool? I can't quite decide yet. I think I almost wish that I would have painted the housing of them white. They kind of stick out like a sore thumb. I'm honestly pretty happy with how the brackets worked out. It seems like that all fits in there really nice. I'm not too close to the headlight cowl at all, and I've got a decent amount of room for my wiring and everything, so that turned out actually pretty darn well. Got my fasteners hidden up inside of there, so the bolt head goes up from the bottom like that. And it seems like the brackets should be more than solid enough that I don't think we'll have any issues. And they are tucked in pretty tight, so I don't think I'll have any problems doing any off-roading with them. So because I've got the aftermarket light on here, I've got a pigtail that comes off of that and plugs into the factory wiring harness, which is this side here. So all I've got to do is figure out which line is my low beam, which line is my ground, and then the last one will be the high beam, which is of course going to become hot when I turn the high beam switch on. So I could of course grab my multimeter and stick the leads down into the ports here to test it. I could also just pull the caps off my wires here, twist those up, stick the black into what I assume is going to be the ground. I don't usually want to assume things with electricity, but with 12 volts and only a couple amps, there's only so much that can really go wrong. Turn the key on, and we'll see in the low beam position which one of these fires my light up here. Looks like neither, so apparently I guessed wrong. Black is ground. So it turns out that the black wire on the factory harness is actually the ground. So I've got my black ground in that terminal. The green is the low beam, and the yellow is going to be the high beam. Flip my high beam switch on, light comes on. So because I've got two of these, I think what I'll do is actually tie both of the lights together and then just run a single line off of those and tap into the backside of the plug here. Make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna remove the headlight. So I've got my red lines twisted together, my black lines twisted together, and I did trim those up a bit. I will be sticking some non-waterproof connections on these. If you wanna get upset about that, you go right ahead. I have never had these fail, even in some salty conditions. I know it's not ideal. It would be better to stick some shrink wrap on them, but I don't have any of that, and this works well enough for me anyway. Of course, you always want to do the tug test. Better to have it come apart here than out on the trail. Same thing with the hot line. Then I've got some wire that is slightly heavier than what I've got on this side. You definitely don't want to go any smaller. And these two ends I do not want to strip off because I'm going to be using these splice connectors, which have this dead end on one side, and that's going to be the section that the line goes into. And then the other side will just get slipped over whatever circuit you were trying to tap into. So in the case of the black wire, we want to go to the ground side of the factory harness. And then I'll just be squishing this little guillotine down onto the wires. And same deal with the black and yellow wire. So if I did that right, if I turn the key on and hit my high beam switch, it'll come on. So I've taken this out for a couple test rides, and I've decided that I just cannot live with these things, and I will show you why here. We'll cover up the headlight. Turn that on, and we turn the high beam on. We're looking at the auxiliary lights only, which honestly are pretty impressive. They have an excellent cutoff and are pretty darn bright. They're not quite as bright as the low beam is on its own, but they are pretty darn nice. The only thing is they send this weird bright flash up and down because they've got this convex lens on here that allows some of the light to spill out, and the curve on there just kind of catches it and throws it right at you in the seated position. So they are extremely distracting, and like I said, I just cannot live with that. So we're gonna switch those out. Thankfully, Auxbeam hooked me up. So big thanks to them for sending this stuff out. We've got a new headlight to try, which I think should be a little bit more even than the old one. That one kind of has a weird pattern to it. Then we've got their new colored paint to match auxiliary lights, which are not quite white, kind of like an off-white, but I think should look a heck of a lot better than those giant things did. And these are just a hair smaller, so I think I'll be a little bit happier with how these look. And these did come with a really nice wiring harness that I will not be using. I'm just gonna snip these off, and then it'll just be a matter of splicing the connections in like I did before. The headlight itself actually has a running light built into it. So that's what this little pigtail on the side of it is for. So I'll just get a female spade connector hooked up to the lines that are on when the key is on. So the 3D printed conversion bracket that I got off of eBay last time, it seems like it's a little bit loose on this new light. So I guess this profile must just be a little bit thinner than the old one. Essentially that's just grabbing this surface right here. So I'm not sure what it is about the new one that makes it a little bit thinner, but I'm just gonna have to stick some foam tape down in there to kind of make up the difference and kind of squish this down into place. Seems like that ought to work. That is much better. Looks like I actually lost the little tab that's supposed to be on the top of this fixture that would go into the old bracket up top, and that kind of just allowed the spring action to work, but that never really did with the last one anyways. I ended up just tightening it up tight to the bracket there, so we'll give that a shot. Got it all back together, and I've got to say I definitely like the look of the headlight a lot better than the old one. It just kind of stands out a bit more and really looks pretty cool on there. A little bit disappointed that the paint doesn't quite match, but I think these look a heck of a lot better on here than the big old goofy black ones did. So let's see how these look on the wall here. There we've got low beam. I don't know if that's brighter or not. Probably about the same. Flip it to high beam. And it seems like we've got enough amps to cover everything that we've got hooked up here. We've got high beams on and the aux lights on. Get a little bit closer here and maybe you can make out the difference. Maybe not, these are pretty bright. There we go. So we've got just the headlight in the middle and then the two auxiliary lights on the side that I'll have kind of aimed towards the ditches a little bit, but that should provide a very nice bright beam straight down the road and into the ditch a little bit. There. Woo! MSR ADV gloves, check. Tusk grip heaters on high, check. Running bike, check. So this headlight has me really pretty confused. We're on just the low beam right now, and as you can kind of see in the trees, or at least hopefully you can see, I'm shining light pretty much to the top of these, I would say probably 25-foot tall trees, which is not at all where a low beam should be. And I don't know, again, how well this is going to be picked up by the camera. But, I mean, there is quite a bit of light way up there. I mean, I don't know, maybe the most focused part is a little bit lower and the rest of it's just sort of spillover. There's, I don't know, I guess kind of a cutoff just like where the top of these reeds are here. But I would look at this and think this needs to be aimed down, which is exactly what I did when I first put this in here. But if I switch over to my high beam, it's, well, right about where a high beam should be. It actually confused me enough that I swapped for the second headlight that came in the package, because of course these come in a package of two at least, because they're more or less made for a vehicle. Now with all that being said, the light output from this is actually pretty good. Seems really nice and even. I like that aspect of it a lot better. I just wish this was actually a regular focused low beam with a nice cutoff. I mean, then it'd be awesome, because the high beam is really very, very impressive. Definitely a nice hot spot right in the center, which is much better than the last one that I had in here. But honestly, with the lack of a cutoff, I just don't see this being an option for me riding on the road, because everything that passes me on the road is going to think that I'm running with my high beams and going to be flashing me. So I guess I'm going to swap back, but I have to say I definitely do like the high beam on this. Peel that off. Woo! Go blind doing it too. Look at that. Ridiculous. It's like a UFO. Woo! So with this all the way lit up like this, I mean, it is absolutely awesome. I think this is maybe even the most light that I'm getting out of any of my bikes right now. I mean, this is pretty impressive, I think. Throws the light down the road real nice. Those auxiliary lights being spotlights definitely, I think, are helpful, because they can kind of fill in the gap that the high beam leaves at the sides. So you can cover the auxiliary lights up with my hands, so you can kind of see we get the high beam in the center. You add those in, and they add some really nice, really nice fill. So yeah, with these on full blast, I mean, this is just an awesome setup. Definitely makes me feel much safer at night with all the deer cruising around here. And I don't really anticipate any issues blowing any fuses, but if that would happen, then, well, I'll have to put a proper wire kit on it and put a new fuse in it, and it won't be that big of a deal. Obviously, it might be good to keep an extra fuse with you on your first couple rides, but honestly, I don't really think it's going to be a problem. But probably wouldn't be a bad idea to check your fuse size and do an amp calculation to figure out if you're still in the safe range. Now, as far as off-road goes, I've got to say, again, I really do appreciate the smoothness of the low beam, but again, of course, you can kind of see that it's shining a little higher, which I guess off-road is actually kind of nice. But again, if you plan on spending time on the road, well, other drivers are not going to think you're so nice. It definitely is nice to have it so smooth, though. That other one is just so disorienting. But, of course, then, if we flip over to the high beam, good gosh, we've got more than enough light out here. Definitely some nice focus light in the center to really light up the trail at a distance. And very nice, even lighting all around us. So pretty much everywhere we need to see, we can, including, you know, quite a ways off of the trail on both sides, which is always a good thing. So I would definitely recommend doing something like this. I would probably pick a better light for the road, but other than that, man, I love the JNS brackets. So nice to have a spot for some auxiliary lights, and I would say the auxiliary lights that I've got on here are definitely nice. You could get some more powerful ones and wire them up to the battery rather than just a high beam switch, and get a relay and all that sort of stuff if you wanted them a little brighter. But honestly, I really like just being able to quick plug them in, steal some power, and you're good to go. So check out the links down in the description. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care, stay safe, and stay swanky.